ways that we crossed paths was at an organization called New Detroit, which had and the deeper questions in our life. So without further ado, I'm going to just turn it over to Matt to speak and answers. Thanks.
All right, good morning. So first of all, his idea of a VIP table must be different than mine because I'm normally not at the VIP table. So I was talking with, there's Mark over there. I came in and he said, you were doing a blessing yesterday and now you're here talking today. So I have to tell you, if you knew me 5 to 10 years ago and you had to create a list of things you never thought I would be here talking about, this would probably be the number one on the list, and you'd owe somebody $20. But I am very honored. I'm very honored to be here, and for that reason, I mean, I speak for a living. I go around and I speak all the time on animal welfare issues, from animal cruelty to their value to us in our lives, to their value on the economy, to their impact on public health and public safety, and I'll touch on that a little bit. And as you heard, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey, how it impacts my career, how it changed the way I look at my career, and then a little bit just me thinking deeper on why animals matter in our lives and why they're important to us. But again, as this is kind of the first time I'm doing this kind of a talk and leading this kind of a presentation, you'll excuse me if I kind of keep my notes available to me here. But I first want to start with my career. I started college. I'm a Grand Valley graduate. I started college in advertising and public relations, and I'm the son of a CEO who was very successful in business, and he thought I was following right down the right path. Until I watched an episode of Crocodile Hunter, and I realized I've always loved the outdoors. I love our connection to nature. I don't want to do advertising and public relations. It's not what I want to do. It's not my calling. So I told my dad, who was graciously paying for my college, and I said, I've changed my major. And his first thought was, economics, general business, what are you doing? I'm so excited to hear. And I said, wildlife biology. And you're going to hear a lot about my dad throughout this presentation because he's been a big factor in my life. And his words were very powerful, which were, is that really what you want to do? And I said, absolutely, it's what I want to do. And he said, then you only have one obligation. That's to do it the best you can and be the best at it. And you have to define success for yourself. Don't define it based on the cars that I have and the house that I have and the things that other people have. You go and define it for yourself. And the thing about my dad and what I love about him the most is he may never have actually said those words, but they were sort of inferred in our life. So my career, I started off on the law enforcement side of things. I was an animal cruelty investigator for many years. I was an animal control supervisor, and actually, just kind of a quick aside, my last name is Pepper, and I had the sergeant stripes on my sleeve, so everyone would call me Sergeant Pepper, until finally the local police gave me so much problems, I just ripped them off and said, you all know who's in charge, just let it go. It's not as bad as I wanted at vet school, but Dr. Pepper, nobody takes him seriously. Nobody comes and sees Dr. Pepper. So I began my career as a cruelty investigator on to as an animal control supervisor, where I worked at, again, the law enforcement side of things. From there, I took my family to Shreveport, Louisiana, as the director of animal services. From Shreveport to Memphis, Tennessee, as the administrator for animal services. From Memphis to Albuquerque, and then from Albuquerque here to Detroit. And when we start talking a little bit about my journey first, as a kickoff to how it's impacted my life, you know, they say the 3 most stressful things that can happen in a life are a new job, having a child, and what was the other one? Moving, having a child, and starting a new job. And I did that to my wife 4 times across country. So my wife would say, man, I got to tell you something. I'm so excited we're pregnant. I said, great, let's move and start a new job and move across country. And we did that. And that's really, when it gets to the contributing factors to what sort of made me rethink about my life, you know, that's really a contributing factor. But I also want to step back a little bit and talk very quickly about the Michigan Humane Society and what I do, and then we'll kind of get into the conversation. So I'm the CEO for the Michigan Humane Society, and the Michigan Humane Society is the oldest and largest, most impactful animal welfare organization in the state of Michigan. We save the lives of more than 11,000 animals every year. We have 3 full-service veterinary centers, 3 full-service animal shelters, a large adoption center in Sterling Heights. Our facilities are in Rochester Hills, Detroit, and Westland. We have a law enforcement team, Cruelty Investigations and Rescue. Has anyone seen the Animal Cops Detroit show? Well then, you should go back and watch them. They're great. They're fantastic. We used to have a show on Animal Planet called Animal Cops Detroit. It was our law enforcement team. And we do a lot of focusing on connecting animals to people. And a lot of that is really from the journey I've been on and how we changed the way we look at the organization. So things like we have a pet food pantry. We have behavioral services. My job is to really keep pets in their homes. We have an amazing animal shelter, but no one should be without the joy of having a pet in their lives, regardless of their socioeconomic status or where they live. So earlier this year, as you heard, I found myself at the Shining Light Awards, and we began chatting just in general about animals, and I was enthralled by something you said, Father, when you said that, whether it's for your soul or theirs, should it matter? We were talking about the relative value of compassion in the souls of an animal, and that brought me here today. So I'm honored. I was honored to take part yesterday in the Blessing of the Animals. That was a really great experience for me, and it brought home how important animals are to us. When I was speaking with just an incredible couple who, as it was I felt like I did something right. I didn't know if I was doing it right or wrong because it's my first time. You learn, how do you do this? And I did it, and the family started crying because they thought about this new pet in their life and the pet they had just lost, and how much of our heart that these animals take up in our lives. So there's a great quote by Will Rogers. And you have to apologize, too. I'm kind of going through a little bit of a cold, so if I reach back and just grab a quick sip, that's what that's for. There's a great quote by Will Rogers, and we'll just get into it now, that says that if there are no dogs in heaven, then when I die, I want to go where they go. And so when I first started doing research for this talk, I spoke with my wife's cousin, who is the assistant superintendent for the Diocese of Grand Rapids in the Catholic schools. And she immediately said, stop. All you're going to get asked is, do pets have souls, and are they going to heaven? And those are for wiser man to debate. But I want to talk about a pet's role sort of in my spirituality. And so while we really aren't here to talk about whether or not dogs go to heaven or whether or not what's the relative value of their souls are, I really want to talk about their impact on my spirituality and my journey. So first I want to kind of ground ourselves in how I got to be where I am. Many times you hear stories of conversion later in life. So I'm 42, and this past Easter Vigil, I was confirmed in the church, and I'll probably revisit that in just a minute. And you said something very wise again yesterday, that late in life, usually you have to have a significant change in philosophy to make a decision like that late in life. And I did. But oftentimes you hear those stories, and it's born out of just horrendous tragedy, stories. You hear stories of addiction or stories of just horrible life stories and hardships that lead people to have a stronger connection to faith. And that really isn't my story. I had a wonderful upbringing. I have 2 incredible parents. My dad grew up always talking philosophy, but less a formal religion. He never grew up really connected to any church. My mom grew up Presbyterian, but quickly disconnected from the church after high school. But they always taught me right from wrong and the value of respecting people in front of you. So I never in my head felt any urgent need for it. There was no need for it for me in my heart. So, So I fast forward. I married a beautiful red-headed Irish Catholic woman straight out of college. We now have 4 beautiful children, and I say beautiful with a question mark around my 15-year-old because he is really getting on my nerves most all the time. But he will get through this. I know he will. 15, 12, 10, and 4, all baptized and raised Catholic. But I was stubborn. That wasn't going to be me. You weren't going to convince me to do anything I didn't feel like I had a need for. But it wasn't really a lack of belief. It just was a lack of full commitment to any belief. It's not that I didn't think about it. I just didn't think about it enough to make it important to me. But things are always easy until they're not. And I talked about moving my family around 4 times. My 15-year-old in the 6th grade, was in his 7th school. So I had moved my wife around, pregnant, and left her usually for 6 months while I went out and scouted a place to go. So things, but I was always one of those guys that things were easy for. It's so easy.